Alright, what's going on everybody? Welcome back to another video here on the channel, and today we're going to be talking about Google and the antitrust lawsuit that's been going on between them and the US Justice Department. Now, last year is when all of this really kind of started. At least that's when things really got interesting. The question has been asked for years upon years now whether or not companies like Google and, well, especially Google, are monopolies that are acting in their own self-interest and only in their own self-interest, which, I mean, if you're a consumer or an internet user, really anyone who deals with technology at all, I think you'll agree that Google is a monopoly. And that's pretty much what's already been ruled in this entire thing. So yes, Google has actually been declared a monopoly officially by the US Justice Department, and it's being considered one of the biggest antitrust settlements probably of the 21st century at least. A judge on Monday ruled that Google's ubiquitous search engine has been illegally exploiting its dominance to squash competition and stifle innovation, a seismic decision that could shake up the internet and hobble one of the world's best-known companies. The highly anticipated decision issued by U.S. District Judge Amit Mehta comes nearly a year after the start of a trial pitting the U.S. Justice Department against Google in the country's biggest antitrust showdown in a quarter century. After reviewing reams of evidence that included testimony from top executives at Google, Microsoft, and Apple during last year's 10-week trial, Mehta issued his potentially market-shifting decision 3 months after the two sides presented their closing arguments in early May. Quote, "After having carefully considered and weighed the witness testimony and evidence, the court reaches the following conclusion: Google is a monopolist and it has acted as one to maintain its monopoly." Mehta wrote in his 277-page ruling. He said Google's dominance in the search market is evidence of its monopoly. Now, like I said, if you're somebody who, I don't know, you've used a smartphone or tried to use just a regular search engine on your computer, really anything with technology, you know what Google is, you know what the company is, you use one of their products. I mean, even if you don't use Google search per se, you're watching a video on YouTube right now. And obviously, YouTube is owned by Google. So like, you know, they have so much control. They have so much power when it comes to internet searching. And a lot of people don't know this. But Google, in a way, double dips, okay? Because not only do they have Google search, which, I mean, that's pretty obvious and apparent, but YouTube is also one of the world's largest search engines. So Google basically has two of like the top search engines in the entire world. And not only do they have this amount of power, right? Not only do they have this immense control over users on the internet and whatnot, right? But they also are doing things as a company in their strategies and when they're rolling out new products and whatnot to basically hold back other companies, hold back the competitors. Now, Google, obviously, they contend with a lot of different companies in a lot of different places, but this is more narrowed down to search engines and, you know, search results. So they're basically really in this industry contending with companies like Apple's Safari or with Microsoft Edge and Bing or with Mozilla and Firefox, things like that, right? These are their, you know, competitors in this industry. So when you look up the numbers and you realize just how deep it goes, though, that's when it's kind of weird, right? Because Google actually, when you look at overall search engines and whatnot, searching services online, Google has a pretty much like a 90% market share, right? Meaning that 9 out of every 10 people, when they're going to search something on the internet, they're using Google services. And obviously, when you have that level of control over the industry and you have that number, that share, you know, of the total users trying to use that industry, you pretty much get to set the flow of how things go, right? So it represents a major setback for Google and its parent Alphabet Incorporated, which had steadfastly argued that its popularity stemmed from consumers' overwhelming desire to use a search engine so good at what it does that it has become synonymous with looking things up online. Google's search engine processes an estimated 8.5 billion queries per day worldwide, nearly doubling its daily volume from 12 years ago, according to a recent study released by investment firm Bond. Kent Walker, Google's president of global affairs, said the company intends to appeal Meta's findings. Quote, "This decision recognizes that Google offers the best search engine but concludes that we shouldn't be allowed to make it easily available," Walker said. Now, I don't think that's really what this is all saying, and I don't really think that's what people think. Now, I will say, obviously, if you were an internet user in the early to mid-2000s, I think you probably remember this big transition like I do, right? It was obviously pretty early in my life, but like like I started using the internet in the early 2000s as a child, and at first I feel like a lot of people around that time were using Internet Explorer, which obviously is now Microsoft Edge. And that was like the search engine that everybody used. Usually, you'd use like yahoo.com. That was like the one that we used at least, and everyone I knew was using at the time. Then obviously, when the time went on, right, these kinds of things obviously changed, right? Google came along, they innovated, they made things better. And yeah, Google became like the top dog with everything. And they've really kind of remained that way ever since the like mid to late 2000s. And yeah, maybe back then it was a big switch going on and people were changing over to Google and whatnot because they were actually offering a superior service, right? But I really feel like, and I'm sure many of you feel the same, I really don't feel like Google is the superior product as much, at least, as it used to be. Or at least that the gap between Google and the competitors has significantly closed. Now, I've used Google Chrome for pretty much like, I'd say 15 or so years now. And I mean, it's pretty serviceable. It does what you need it to do for the most part, and it's still obviously the most popular, but I mean, I've mentioned this in videos in the past and whatnot, but as time goes on, Google becomes much more unreliable. The searches are very obviously filtered or altered, and they've been caught doing this. They've been caught, restricting searches on certain keywords and whatnot, basically, whether people want to admit it or not, censoring the results of what people search. So, things that maybe Google doesn't find to be appropriate or sensitive or whatever it may be, they don't outright prevent people from finding these things, but a lot of the times they do things like hiding it away in the back pages of the search results or making it impossible to actually narrow down. And they've even been caught like when people try to search up competitive search engines and browsers, and basically they try to leave that Google ecosystem. It's been shown that Google stifles that. They try to hide those results, so they try to trick people into staying with their programs. And I know a lot of people are, but Optimus, they're a corporation. They need to do this. This is how companies compete. They prevent people. You think if McDonald's could make it to where you couldn't go to Wendy's, they wouldn't? Well, that's the entire point, right? Is that massive corporations that have already established massive market shares and are already doing massive business, they shouldn't have the right to hold consumers hostage. They shouldn't have the right to stifle the industry and try to make the competitors disappear. I mean, we need competition, especially when it comes to the tech world and tech industry, right? Like, a lot of these things, as established as they've become in our lives, are still developing at a very rapid pace. The technology is progressing. There's new innovation literally every single day in the tech world. And, competitors, like I said, they're kind of closing the gap. I never used to use Microsoft Edge at all back a few years ago, but it's become much more usable over the last 5 or so years, The old memes of, Internet Explorer 4 days late, takes forever to find what you're looking for, right? That's no longer really the case with Microsoft Edge and other browsers like DuckDuckGo, Mozilla Firefox, right? Like these other companies out there are providing services that are at least comparable, you know what I mean? It's not the Wild West of the internet anymore where only one service provider or one, search engine can be dominant at a time. And Google doesn't want it to change from that because obviously they make so much fucking money and get so much power and notoriety from trying to control it. For now, the decision vindicates antitrust regulators at the Justice Department, which filed its lawsuit nearly 4 years ago while Donald Trump was still president, and has been escalating it in efforts to rein in big tech's power during President Joe Biden's administration. Quote, "This victory against Google is a historic win for the American people," said Attorney General Merrick Garland. Quote, "No company, no matter how large or influential, is above the law. The Justice Department will continue to vigorously enforce our antitrust laws." The case depicted Google as a technological bully that methodically has thwarted competition to protect a search engine that has become the centerpiece of a digital advertising machine that generated nearly $250 billion in revenue last year. Justice Department lawyers argued that Google's monopoly enabled it to charge advertisers artificially high prices while also enjoying the luxury of not having to invest more time and money into improving the quality of its search engine, a lax approach that hurt consumers. So basically, while Google is trying to hold the rest of the competition back with the arm bar, they're trying to stop them from taking any market share, making more money, right? They're not actually providing anything of a better service to the user. I mean, let's be real here. Like I said, I've been a long time user of Google services. I remember when they were like the, not new guy on the block, but like they were the new top dog, right? Like when they finally took that first place lead. And the difference was comparable, you know, it was noticeable. You could be like, okay, this is the other search engines and this is Google. That's why the phrase became, oh, just Google it. You know what I mean? But that's no longer the case. Now that they're already so far out ahead of everybody else, they have no real incentive to add new features or provide security updates on time, really anything. And, you know, like I said, I think the service has gotten worse. I mean, Gmail, if you try to like search in the mail that you've received, right, for specific things or phrases, 95% of the time, it just doesn't even fucking work, right? YouTube, I mean, I've probably made 200 videos at this point talking about all the problems and all the controversies and whatnot that happens here on YouTube. Google search, the quality of the search results has gotten worse. Google Chrome itself runs significantly worse and is significantly more bloated than it used to be as a program. And meanwhile, as all these services continue to just kind of keep on kicking down the road, Google wants to try and maintain this as the status quo. And I mean, honestly, I think this is a good ruling. I think it's a good thing that, you know, somebody finally stepped in and did something, finally set the precedent of like, these companies aren't completely untouchable. Now, you know, they say in the article, oh, no company is above the law no matter who they are. Obviously, that's not true. We've seen it literally dozens and dozens and dozens of times where, you know, even like Google, for instance, they got away with it for so fucking long. They've gotten away with so many different things. And, you know, it's just been slaps on the wrist and it's been a whole lot of nothing. But at least now they've actually been ruled as a monopoly. And so they can't just sit there and keep pretending like they've done something innocently, right? Because that's just not the case. The potential outcome could result in a wide-ranging order requiring Google to dismantle some of the pillars of its internet empire or preventing it from paying to ensure its search engine automatically answers queries on the iPhone and other devices. Or the judge could conclude only modest changes are required to level the playing field. Quote, Google's loss in its search antitrust trial could be a huge deal depending on the remedy, said eMarketer senior analyst Evelyn Mitchell-Wolfe. Regardless, she added, a drawn-out appeals process will delay any immediate effects for both consumers and advertisers. The appeals process could take as long as 5 years, predicted George Hay, a law professor at Cornell University, who was the chief economist for the Justice Department's Antitrust Division for most of the 1970s. That lengthy process will enable Google to fend off the likelihood of Meta banning default search agreements, Hay said, but it probably won't shield the company from class action lawsuits citing the judge's findings that advertisers were gouged with monopolistic pricing. If there is a significant shakeup, it could turn out to be a coup for Microsoft, whose own power was undermined during the late 1990s when the Justice Department targeted the software maker in an antitrust lawsuit accusing it of abusing the dominance of its Windows operating system on personal computers to lock out the competition. So this is probably the biggest downside of this entire story, is that the actual penalties and the ramifications that Google will face for doing what they've done, it's not going to be immediate, and realistically, we don't even really know what's going to happen yet, right? Now, they could slam the hammer down on Google, they could make them, like they said, dismantle some of their internet empire, aka they'd have to spin off and probably sell some of their subsidiaries and products and whatnot. They may be prevented from paying other companies like Apple and Microsoft to basically like shoehorn in Google products and services on their devices before the consumer even gets their hands on them. Or realistically, they could just give them a slap on the wrist and say, hey guys, don't do it again. We really don't know. And no matter what happens, no matter if it's going to be a light or heavy punishment here, we're probably not going to see anything this decade. I mean, even if it did take that 5 years before all the appeals are out of the way and we finally start levying out punishments, I mean, we're going to be going into the 2030s at that point, right? So basically, Google is going to have time to try and react and respond to this. And we're going to just kind of have to see in the long run how this all plays out and if this is going to be big news for Google or just another small bump in the road. Anyway, with that being said, thank you guys for watching. If you did enjoy, make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're brand new around here on the channel, follow me over on Twitter and Twitch at @SubToOptimus. Make sure to check out Shoptimus down below. Thank you to my Watch Optimus subscribers. Your support helps the channel tremendously. And until my next video, guys, this is Optimus, well, talking about the Google antitrust suit and signing out. And that's a wrap on this video, but big shout out to my Optimus Nation supporters. You guys are the real MVPs. For $10 a month, you get access to loads of exclusive videos and archived live streams, my members-only Minecraft server where you can possibly appear in gameplay, early access to all new uploads, an invitation to the private Discord, and much more.